Welcome to our deep dive today. We're going to be looking at The Body Code by Dr. Bradley Nelson. We'll be drawing from his book and kind of trying to get a feel for what it is and maybe see if it kind of resonates with you.
Yeah, it's interesting. The way Dr. Nelson starts off the book, he doesn't jump right into energy work. He actually points out a problem that I think a lot of us can relate to, and that's the limits of our healthcare system.
Yeah, not the typical start to a book about energy healing, right?
Yeah.
But I mean, he really makes you think when he talks about how many Americans, like a crazy number, 47%, are dealing with some kind of chronic illness.
And here's the thing. The U.S. spends more than any other developed country on healthcare, but we don't live as long. So Dr. Nelson, he kind of suggests that maybe this focus on just dealing with problems when they become huge crises, instead of figuring out why we're getting sick in the first place, that might be part of the issue.
So that's where the body code comes in, I guess, with a totally different way of thinking about it. It's not about putting Band-Aids on things. It's about like really understanding what's causing the problem, the disease, in the first place.
Yeah, and he bases it on these three core principles: energy, subconscious mind, and divine guidance.
Let's unpack that. So starting with energy, I mean, the idea that everything is energy vibrating at different frequencies, that's not exactly some fringe idea anymore, is it?
No, not at all. And even quantum physics is kind of starting to back up this idea that, like, our thoughts, our intentions can actually influence energy. So Dr. Nelson, he takes that and he suggests that when our energetic frequencies get out of whack, that's actually what leads to problems, physical problems, emotional problems, all kinds of stuff.
So it's not just about our physical body. It's like this energy that's flowing through us and around us that's playing a role too. So then that makes that second principle, the subconscious mind, even more interesting. He talks about the subconscious mind being like this powerful computer that has the answers to what's going on with our health.
It's wild, right? Like this idea that our subconscious, it's got all this knowledge about our own well-being, and the body code is like a system to tap into that.
But how do we tap into it? That's
Yeah.
where that third principle comes in divine guidance.
Right.
And I got to be honest, that one's a little outside my comfort zone.
Yeah, it can seem a bit, I guess, unconventional. But he really believes that asking for help from a higher power, that's a key part of this whole process. He even shares stories about how he's gotten these intuitive insights that have led to like breakthroughs with his patients.
Okay, I'm open to it. I mean, there's been some pretty crazy studies on the power of prayer and things like that. So,
Yeah.
but how does all this, like, how do these principles actually translate into dealing with real health issues?
Well, that's where it gets really cool. So Dr. Nelson, he gets into all these different imbalances that the body code can help address, and he uses these amazing real-life examples. So one of the most fascinating concepts he talks about is trapped emotions.
Trapped emotions, that sounds like kind of like carrying baggage around, but on an energetic level, I guess.
In a way, yeah. So basically, they're these like spheres of energy that get stuck in your body, often from things that happened in the past, and they can really mess with your body's natural energy flow.
So like if you had a really angry experience as a kid, that could still be causing you physical pain years later.
That's the idea. He tells this story about a guy named Steve who had horrible back pain, like debilitating back pain, for over 20 years. And it turned out it wasn't a physical problem at all. It was a trapped emotion of anger from something that happened when he was a kid that he didn't even remember consciously.
And by releasing this trapped emotion, his back pain went away.
Completely. As soon as it was identified and released, the pain was gone. And it shows you just how powerful these emotional energies can be and how they can show up as physical stuff if you don't deal with them.
Wow, it makes you think how many of us are walking around with these hidden emotional things that are affecting our health without us even knowing it.
It's definitely something to consider. And trapped emotions, they're just the beginning. He also talks about this thing called the heart wall, which is...
A heart wall? What's that?
It's like this barrier that we build up around our hearts, often without even realizing it. It's to protect ourselves from getting hurt, but what it ends up doing is blocking us from feeling real joy and love and connection.
So it's like we're putting on this emotional armor, and it keeps us safe, but then we end up stuck inside.
Exactly. And he tells this incredible story about this guy named Giacomo who had this super thick heart wall. He was successful in his career but felt totally empty inside. And it was only when he released his heart wall that his life really started to change.
Like what kind of change? Did releasing his heart wall just help him emotionally, or was there more to it?
Oh, it was a total transformation. Like, he felt a deeper connection to his spirituality, his relationships, like really blossomed. And he even found this passion for his work again that he thought he'd lost. It was like releasing his heart wall opened him up to this whole new level of experiencing life.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
It makes you wonder how many people are out there, they seem successful on the outside, but they're struggling with this hidden wall around their heart.
Yeah.
And the body code gives you a way to identify and take down those walls.
Yes, and it goes even further. He even gets into the influence of like the unseen world, what he calls entities.
Okay, now we're getting into the really out there stuff, right?
Yeah.
Entities, are we talking about like ghosts or spirits or...
So Dr. Nelson believes that these entities, these like dark spirits, can actually attach to people and cause all kinds of problems, from making you feel really messed up emotionally to even causing physical illness. Now, I know that might sound a little far-fetched, but he shares some pretty convincing stories from his practice.
Like what kind of stories? Give me an example.
So he describes this woman who'd been dealing with anxiety and nightmares, like really bad panic attacks for years. And traditional therapy didn't help much. But it turned out she had this entity attached to her that was like feeding off her fear. It was making everything worse.
And by dealing with this entity, her symptoms got better.
Oh, yeah, huge difference. Like once the entity was gone, all that inner turmoil vanished, the nightmares stopped. She felt this deep sense of peace and safety that she'd never felt before.
Wow, that's wild. Even if you're skeptical about the whole entity thing, it's hard to deny the impact, right?
Exactly. And it's important to remember, he's not saying the body code should replace traditional medicine or anything. It's more like this complementary approach that can address these deeper energetic things that doctors often miss.
So it's about broadening our understanding of what might be contributing to our health and then exploring, different ways to heal.
Yeah, exactly. And it's not just trapped emotions and entities. He also points out that misalignments can happen all over the body, not just in your bones.
You mean like our muscles and organs can be out of alignment too? How does that happen?
Oh, all sorts of ways. Physical injuries, bad posture, even emotional stress can cause things to get out of whack. And he gives this really fascinating example of a woman who had really bad COPD, that chronic lung condition.
And the body code helped her with that? How is that even possible?
So through muscle testing, he discovered that one of her vertebrae was misaligned, and it was pressing on a nerve that was affecting her lungs.
So a simple misalignment in her spine was contributing to a serious breathing problem.
Yeah, and once he realigned the vertebra, her COPD symptoms improved dramatically. It really shows you how connected everything is in the body and how what seems like totally unrelated symptoms can have these surprising root causes.
It makes you realize how often we're just treating the symptoms without really understanding what's going on underneath.
And that's a big part of what the body code is about. It's about getting to the root of the problem, not just covering it up.
Right. And then there's the whole issue of toxins. I mean, we're surrounded by them. Heavy metals, chemicals, pollution. It's no wonder our bodies are having a hard time.
Totally. He talks about this case with Sandra, who was having all these seemingly random symptoms: fatigue, brain fog, digestion problems, you name it. Turned out she had lead poisoning from her drinking water.
That's scary.
Yeah.
And it just shows how these hidden toxins can really mess with our health without us having a clue.
Yeah, it's a good reminder to pay attention to what's in our environment. But here's the question. How do we actually figure out what these hidden imbalances are? Whether it's trapped emotions or misalignments or toxins, that's where muscle testing comes in.
Muscle testing, okay, this is where it gets a little, I don't know, controversial for some people. Some people might hear muscle testing and think it's a bunch of hocus pocus, but I'm curious to understand how it actually works.
It's actually a really simple but powerful technique.
So walk me through it. How does muscle testing act as this bridge to our subconscious mind?
Okay, so it's based on this idea that our bodies are really intelligent and they can communicate with us through these subtle signals. And muscle testing basically uses muscle strength as a way to tell if something's true or false.
Wait, you're saying our muscles can tell us if something's true or false? How does that even work?
Okay, think about it like this. If you hold your arm out straight and someone tries to push it down while you're thinking about something positive, chances are your arm is going to stay strong. But if you think about something negative or stressful, your arm will weaken and it'll be easier to push down.
Right, I've heard of that. It's like our bodies react instinctively to the energy of our thoughts.
Exactly. And muscle testing takes that a step further. So by asking specific questions and seeing how your muscles respond, you can actually communicate directly with your subconscious mind and get clear yes or no answers.
So you're using muscle strength as this biofeedback mechanism to tap into the wisdom of the subconscious.
You got it. And that's how Dr. Nelson uses muscle testing in the body code to pinpoint exactly what imbalances are at the root of a person's health challenges.
But it's not just about identifying them, right? The body code gives you ways to actually correct those imbalances.
Absolutely. And we'll get into those techniques and some even more mind-blowing stuff about the body code after a quick break. Don't go anywhere.
Okay, so right before the break, we were really getting into that whole muscle testing thing, and it's like our bodies have this like built-in truth serum, right? It can show us what's really going on even if we don't realize it.
It is a powerful tool, but it's not just about figuring out what's wrong. The real, the magic happens when you actually start fixing those imbalances.
That's what I want to know more about. So once you've used muscle testing to figure out what's off, how do you go about fixing it?
Well, Dr. Nelson uses all kinds of different techniques, but a lot of them come from energy healing principles. One of the most common ones involves using a magnet, and you basically swipe it down the governing meridian.
Wait, governing meridian? What's that? I'm not familiar with that
Oh,
term.
right, yeah. It's from traditional Chinese medicine. The
Yeah.
governing meridian is like this main energy channel that runs through your whole body. It's how energy gets distributed to everything.
Okay, so by swiping a magnet along this energy channel, you're somehow affecting how energy flows in the body.
Exactly. Remember, it's all energy. And the magnet, it's like this conduit to help shift those energy frequencies and get them back in alignment. Think of it like a tuning fork. When a musical instrument is out of tune, you use a tuning fork to adjust it.
So it's not just the physical action of using the magnet, it's like the intention behind it that matters.
Exactly. It's all about the focused energy and the intention you're putting into it. It's not like you need some special gift or ability to do this. Anyone can learn how.
See, that's what I like about it. It's empowering. It demystifies all that energy healing stuff.
That's one of the coolest things about the body code. It gives people the knowledge and the tools to understand and work with their own energy systems.
Now, we've talked a lot about trapped emotions, but I'm guessing there are tons of other imbalances that the body code can help with, right? Like, give us a sense of how broad this all is.
Oh, yeah. The range of stuff he covers is mind-blowing. It goes from identifying pathogens like viruses and bacteria, to figuring out if you have any nutritional deficiencies, to even dealing with things like inherited emotional patterns.
Inherited emotional patterns, what are those?
It's pretty wild, right? It's this idea that we actually carry the energetic imprints of our ancestors within us.
You mean it's not just our own experiences that shape us, but we also inherit stuff energetically from our family?
That's the idea. And sometimes these inherited imbalances, they can be at the root of our own problems, even if we don't even know it.
Wow, that's deep. It makes you wonder how much of our stuff is actually ours and how much is like baggage from past generations.
It's a great question. And the body code gives you tools to figure that out and release those inherited burdens. It's like you're not just clearing your own energy, but the energy of your whole family line.
Kind of like ancestral spring cleaning, but for your energy. That's pretty amazing to think about.
It really highlights how interconnected everything is.
You know, as we're talking about all these different imbalances, what keeps coming back to me is this spiritual aspect of healing. Dr. Nelson seems to really emphasize that it's not just about fixing physical symptoms, but also about connecting to something bigger than ourselves.
Oh, absolutely. He sees the body as this sacred temple, you know? And he believes that real healing has to involve aligning your physical self with your spiritual self.
That makes sense to me. It's not just about fixing what's broken, it's about cultivating well-being on all levels.
He even talks about this concept of spiritual disconnection,
Mm.
where your spirit and your physical body get out of whack.
So it's like our essence, that life force energy gets all fragmented.
Yeah, and that can show up in all sorts of ways. Feeling lost, like you don't have a purpose, feeling empty. Even physical problems can come from that disconnection.
And the body code has techniques to help you reconnect, to bring those parts back together.
It does. It helps you pinpoint the blockages that are preventing that alignment from happening, and then gives you the tools to clear them out.
You know, I'm really liking how this system pulls together all these different aspects of healing, the physical, the emotional, the spiritual. It's a truly holistic approach, you know?
That's one of the things that makes it so powerful. It recognizes that we're not just a bunch of separate parts, but we're one whole being.
We've covered a lot of ground already, but I feel like we've barely scratched the surface of the body code.
There's so much more to explore, and we're going to dive into some of those fascinating details right after we take a moment to reflect.
Okay, so we've talked about all this big picture stuff about energy and the subconscious mind and even like the spiritual side of things. But what I really like about the body code is how practical it is.
Yeah, That's one of the things that people don't always get about energy work. It's not just some vague theoretical stuff. He actually gives you concrete steps you can take.
Yeah, he's really big on figuring out the root cause of things, not just, you know, slapping a Band-Aid on a symptom without really understanding it.
And he gives you these very specific questions to ask yourself when you're doing that muscle testing to help guide you toward what the real issue is.
So, like, say I'm having problems with my digestion. Instead of just thinking, oh, it must be something I ate, the body code would have me ask, could this be connected to a trapped emotion? Or is there a nutritional deficiency at play here?
Exactly. And a lot of times when you follow that line of questioning, you uncover these connections you never would have thought of before.
It's like you become this detective for your own health.
Yeah.
Instead of clues at a crime scene, it's your own body and energy giving you the clues.
I love that analogy and that feeling of being empowered to investigate, to not just be a passive patient. I think that that's so important for people.
I'm sure there are people listening who are thinking, okay, this all sounds interesting, but does it actually work? Is there any proof?
That's a totally valid question. And honestly, Dr. Nelson addresses that head on. He shares a ton of stories from his own practice, cases where people have seen these amazing results.
And it's not just for one specific type of problem, right? We've talked about a few examples, but it seems like the body code has helped with everything from chronic pain to allergies to even relationship issues.
Yeah, that's what's so compelling, the range of things it can address. Of course, everyone's different, so results aren't guaranteed or anything. But the sheer number of positive stories is pretty hard to ignore.
It really does make you think, if all these seemingly unrelated problems could be coming from these deeper energetic imbalances, maybe we've been looking at health the wrong way for a long time.
It's a real shift in perspective. The body code isn't saying it's some miracle cure, but it gives you a different way of understanding disease, a much broader context.
It's more about being proactive about your well-being, learning to listen to what your body's trying to tell you, and working with that inner healing power we all have.
And it's a journey, not a quick fix. It's about constantly learning and uncovering more about yourself and becoming more whole over time.
That makes a lot of sense to me. It's not about reaching some point of perfect health. It's about always striving for that deeper alignment.
So for those listening who are intrigued by the body code and want to learn more, what would you suggest? Where should they start?
Well, Dr. Nelson's book is definitely worth a read. He explains everything so clearly. And he also has a website with more resources and even training programs for people who really want to go deep.
And don't discount the value of finding a practitioner who's trained in the body code. They can offer personalized guidance and support.
It's such a fascinating field. It feels like this blend of ancient wisdom and modern science. And there's still so much to discover. Dr. Nelson's work feels like it's really bridging that gap.
It's definitely something worth exploring for anyone who's looking for a more holistic and empowered approach to their health.
Well, this has been a deep dive, for sure. I hope it sparked some curiosity, maybe even given you a few aha moments along the way.
As always, we encourage you to do your own research, explore what resonates with you.
And here's a final thought to leave you with. Dr. Nelson talks about the human body as being a sacred temple for the spirit. If that's true, how might that change how we think about health, healing, even just our daily lives?
That's a really powerful question, one that's worth reflecting on. Until next time, keep seeking, keep exploring.